And as Zoom advises us to do, I'm calling out that the session is being recorded. If you don't wish to be recorded, you may choose to keep your microphones and cameras off. However, this is an interactive session intended to have lots of conversations. Would love to see people and talk rather than just having them, just hearing their voices. So would love to see all of you on the screen. I will request you to keep your audios muted till the time you want to speak. You can raise your digital hand and we'll invite you to speak. And as the session goes by, feel free to type in your questions in the text chat. There is lots of opportunity to ask questions through the session too, but we will have a separate Q&A session towards the end if you choose to wait until then. With that, I'm totally excited about the session. We'll be getting right into the session. So Emmy, may I request you to please wave your hand so that everybody can see you to facilitate the session called as Belbin and Coaching, Complementary for Individual and Team Effectiveness. Quick word about Emmy. It is not going to be quick. There is so much he's done, but with almost 4 decades of experience in the corporate sector, Emmy is a senior management professional with experience in core and emerging sectors like executive education, hospitality, financial services, automobile, oil and gas, EPC, infrastructure, and waste management. He has worked in diverse ownership structures like MNCs, board-managed companies, JVs, and family-owned businesses. He is versatile and agile. He's versatile and agile with good understanding of interplay between structure, culture, and decision-making. He's currently the managing director of GRID International India, the World Authority on Culture and Transformation, after retiring as the director of Tata Management Services Training Center, Pune. He is also one of the select group of mentors in Columbia University's MS program on technology management USA. A case study at IIM Ahmedabad on the leadership role of HR in times of crisis is based on the relief and rehabilitation efforts under his leadership during the Surat floods. An alumni of XLRI, Emmy has also equipped himself with advanced management programs of AIMA on strategic profitability management. He has the following certifications in coaching: Certified Hogan Assessment Coach, Hogan Advanced Certification Workshop, Certified Belbin Team Roles Facilitator at UK, Certified Coach of Ericsson International, Certified Leadership Circle, Profile Practitioner, and completed modules 1 to 4 of ACTH of the ICF ACTP path. He has coached and inspired several corporate leaders and civil servants in his leadership journey. Not only this, Emmy also takes time for lots of community activities. He serves as the president of the Rotary E-Club for Greater Good, RI District 3190. I don't know what that means, but I'm calling it out. He serves on the board of St. Peter's High School, Panchagni, Interserve India, and under the Mango Tree UTMT, a social enterprise. Emmy is also a blogger, writer, photographer, and experiential. Can we put a big round of applause? I'm so happy to have you on board with us to talk to us about Belbin, Emmy. But before I hand over the mic to Emmy, we're going to have a quick poll. I'm going to launch the poll while Emmy sets up his slides and begins his magic. I have put up the poll on the screen. May I request all of you to respond to this poll?
Well, it's quite interesting, the results. Request all to
people across all, yeah. We'll give it 30 more seconds. About 37 people have already attempted. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now and share the results with all of you. Emmy. So now you know who is the audience you are dealing with. You know,
Yes.
about 60% of our audience have just heard about it. So over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here this evening. And I'm really overwhelmed by the registrations and all of you. It's quite an eclectic audience over here from different walks of life. And also thank you for your interest in Belbin. I also want to, thank Shanti and Jay for, asking me and nudging me to get into this particular role. And I must confess, I'm doing this for the first time. But it's been a learning for me in putting it all together for you. I never thought that one day I would be sitting and talking about Belbin. When I first did my Belbin profile way back in 1997, I got to understand about it. And then later, in 2005, I got certified as a Belbin Team Role Facilitator, had the opportunity to really work around that with different groups in different organizations I've served. And also now being independent, I do tell people to look at Belbin, and then it's been a wonderful tool for self-development and self-awareness. Thank you all. And I see that about 4 people are certified and who've been using Belbin and coaching as well. But many, 8 do not know much about Belbin, and 24, just heard the name. And so I think that's a good starting point. But I presume most of us in this audience are also in some way into coaching and are coaches. So therefore, I'd like to introduce this tool and see how it can be complementary to your coaching effectiveness. That's the whole purpose of today's session. Let's get going. And so we've done this part of what you understand with the team roles. But let's ask a question. Yes. So the key to maximizing the performance, people, they say, is treat other people as you'd like to be treated. Could use the chat, or someone can unmute and say, is this statement correct? Treat other people as you would like to be treated. Anita says yes. Hello, Abovi. Yeah, everyone says yes, yes, yes. So let's kind of flesh it up a little bit, right? Now,
so, Emmy, I may say a little differently.
Yes, please.
I would like to treat other people the way they would like to be treated.
Okay. Saji says, no, treat them as you like to. Yeah. So yeah, I see that the chats are coming in a little differently, Anu, after you've brought in a little direction. But some say, yes, they like to be, they look at this proposition, treat other people as you would like to be treated. Now, if you were to see how it can be manifest, suppose in terms of eating habits, somebody is a vegetarian or and if the other person who's coming to you prefers non-veg food, now it's a different story, right? It's a different story. And therefore we come to what Anu says, the key is to treat other people as they would like to be treated. I think that is the key thing. And how do we know how people like to be treated? And that is also a particular question on our mind, because we may not really know easily. Then we can see, that's what the research of Dr. Meredith Belbin, who is a Cambridge University professor. At the moment, he's 96 years. His birthday was on June 4th. He's 96 years and still agile. And in the 70s, he did a lot of research and came up with the Belbin Team Roles methodology. Initially, he looked at 8 roles. And then a little later, a few years later, he said there are 9 roles. And so we're going to talk about those team roles and what are the implications on coaching for us. Okay, so what is a team role? Dr. Belbin says our tendency to behave, contribute, and interrelate with others in a particular way. Okay, now that's how it's defined. And if you take that statement, and by the end of the session, maybe this particular definition will come alive for each one of us in some of the questions you answer, some of the activities we do, and the examples I share. But the team role is our tendency to behave, contribute, and interrelate with others in a particular way. So what I want to do is put you in some small groups, and I want you to identify what are the different roles people play. You have about 3 minutes in your small group. Shanti will help us in putting you in breakouts. Appoint a spokesperson who would then share the output on the chat. I'm just conscious of our time, so therefore we would use the chat, and all of us can jointly review. And once we get the things in the chat, we will all jointly review. But is that clear as an instruction? Yes, no? Yes, I hear people saying yes. So Shanti, would you help us in putting, I don't know how many, about 49 people.
Put them into
as-
6 breakout rooms.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm opening
6.
the rooms, and in about 2 minutes, I'll send a reminder for the last minute remaining and
Yes.
pull it back in. Yeah. And your
Yes,
room.
all have to work fast, work a little quickly. That's going to be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people have moved into the rooms. Oh, Emmy has also joined the room.
It's okay.
So I'll give 1 more minute and then send them a broadcast message.
Can you keep that question on the screen? I think that question has disappeared. So
The question is with Emmy.
Okay.
And people can't see the main question in the breakout room anyways.
Correct. Okay. In the chat box, if we can put it.
I'm wondering why was Emmy moved? Normally host and co-host don't move.
Will not move. Will not move.
Yeah.
It's okay. There are many who haven't moved yet.
Yeah.
Jagdish hasn't moved. Ashwini hasn't moved.
Yeah. Lot
Yeah.
of people choose not to.
Fine.
we continue to have people join in. Yeah, I'm going to close the rooms now. And people will have just about a minute to come back. Hi, Abhilasha. We just did an activity. People have moved into breakout rooms. I'm bringing them back in. So give us just about 35-40 seconds while they're all back in.
Okay. Welcome back, and I hope you could all discuss. So let's spokesperson. I mean, everyone can put it on chat. We can all see it. So I'll give you 30 seconds to put it on, put each spokesperson, group 1, group 2, group 3, please put your thoughts. Thanks, Anu. Thanks very much. Yeah, very interesting. Very good go-to person, planner, information gatherer, harmonizes. Yes. Thanks, Piyush. Next group. Anand, initiator, limelight hogger, quiet passengers, planners, ideators, coordinators, facilitators. Interesting. Okay. Sriram, thank you, Anand. Then we got Sriram, says, group 1, team leader, scribe, visionary, executive, strategist, networker, planner, organizer, inspirer, mentor, coach, counselor, cheerleader. Thanks so much, Sriram. Then Aparna says, leader, project manager, planner, treasurer, disruptor, coordinator, collaborator, implementer, facilitator, coach. Anand, group 4, so I did not. Okay. Then there's observer, resource planner, data gathering, supporting, Rajiv. Anyone else? Are all the groups there, please? Sandeep. Thank you, Sandeep. Managers, team lead, assistant, scribe, team leader, networker, planner, organizer, inspirer, mentor, coach, counselor, cheerleader. Oh, hesitators. Okay. Okay, that's also interesting. Okay. So I think we've got a lot of roles, thanks so much for your participation. I think it's also, you all are very, very effective and an efficient group. In a very short time, we could harness so many ideas. Thanks a lot. So what Dr. Belbin said is there are essentially 3 broad bands. One is the task or action-oriented roles. Now, when you look at the chat, you can identify them. Then there is the team or social related roles. And what could be the next one be? Anyone? If you were in a classroom, maybe I would have offered a little incentive for the right answer.
Individual.
Individual? Not very audible.
The strategist.
The strategist? Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
That's right. Individual or thinking roles.
Thinking roles. Yeah.
Essentially, if you were to go back into the room and take all these 40, 50 roles you've done, we could broadband it into these 3 basic roles. And that's in the Belbin methodology. And in that itself, you've got also 3, each of them have got 3 further roles. So I'm going to talk about them in a moment. But before we get to that, I'm taking a little deviation. I'm getting into engineering. And I think there are many engineers here, especially in engineering and machining. There is this term called allowance. You would have come across it. An allowance is a planned deviation between an exact dimension and a nominal or theoretical dimension. So it's a little deviation. So that is the meaning of elements. And I bring the connection to that, to what in Belbin methodology we call allowable weakness, right? And a couple of questions. Is there such a term as allowable weakness? Okay. And any thoughts around that? I said it's there in Belbin. So what is an allowable weakness? Anyone?
So pitfall, I am of that 5% who is a certified Belbin. So maybe I may borrow some terms of some of the usages. So allowable weakness is somewhere the pitfall of the strength which someone brings on the table is an zone where that weakness is bound to happen. And I think that's
Right.
what Dr. Belbin tries to define, that this is something has to be discarded, allowed,
Right.
and try to use it.
Right, right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And why is it important in coaching? Anyone?
There is no perfect, there is no idealism, in any topic or any thought.
So as a coach, if you're aware through this methodology that there's an allowable weakness, then what would you do? Think about it. Just go back that. So it is a planned deviation because of a certain strength. And I also use this term that a derailer is an overused strength, or, a weakness is an overused strength. So basically the root is there and you overuse it, then it becomes a weakness. Let me just share an example, though not from Belbin as such, but I want to give you let's take this attribute of courage. Okay. When it is deficient, we call it timidity. Okay. Otherwise, we see on one side of it is responsibility. A little excess of it is called boldness. And really excess of courage is rashness. Can you see? But the root is courage. The root is courage. So the absence or the deficiency of courage, I would say, is timidity. Okay. So when we look at some of the attributes in these team roles, there is an allowable weakness. It is, 2 sides of the same coin. Let me take another attribute. It's concern. Okay. And on the deficiency part, it is indifference. But otherwise, it is calmness and warmth. The excess of it is mania. Have you seen in that movie Dar as such? So that's the other side of it. So you see the whole continuum, right, which is there. So does this give you a perspective that there is a certain quality? It is possible that the other side of it will remain. Let's take the Belbin team roles and see the allowable weakness in each of them. I'm talking about the task and action roles. The first one is called the shaper. The shaper, and if you go back to the chat, you'll find that many of you said in the group I was initiator and so on and so forth. This challenging, dynamic, goal-oriented, and has driven courage. But sometimes in the way you do it, it is likely that you would provoke others and can upset people, right? Can you picture it? So what happens is, now that you have this knowledge of a shaper who is dynamic, who's who's able to get things moving. But because you get irritated by his blunt or the way he upsets people, you might think that the person is actually against you or doesn't like you. But if you understand that this is the allowable weakness of the dynamic behavior which one has, then perhaps one may not attach motives to that behavior. I think that has been my key learning in the Belbin Team Role Methodology. In saying, oh, okay, a shaper, yes, he could be, also provocative. But then if we make it make it aware to him, then perhaps he'll moderate his behavior. Look at the implementer. And I've come across this. People who are implementers are disciplined and organized. And I've seen in one instance, just about 2 days before a particular event, I asked someone to make some changes because I thought that would be better. And that person virtually broke down. They were saying, how can I do it? How can I make so many changes now? We just have 2 more days to the deadline. Okay, so I saw this quality of being a little inflexible. Then I said, okay, you need some support. And then I also moderated my behavior as a manager and how one gives assignments. But that knowledge helped me. Then there's another aspect of completer finisher, people who are accurate, conscientious, meticulous, almost perfectionists. And we see they get this allowable weakness, which is there, just inclined to worry and reluctant to delegate. Okay, so as I'm telling you about these things, just picture of, role models or others in your own experience, particularly the large. Because now with this awareness, I think we may be a little more tolerant of each other and also a bit more forgiving rather than thinking that why are they behaving this way to me, and why are they not taking initiative and so on. Let's see other roles as such. Then there are team and social roles, very interesting. This is called the resource investigator. You need something done. They're the ones who are on the phone, who can develop contacts, get things moving, and things happen very quickly. The connections happen. You want to open a door in the ministry, they do it. In a new corporate, they can do it. But they can also be very over-optimistic and easily bored and lose interest as an allowable weakness. Then you have got the coordinator. And the coordinator is somebody who's calm and confident. We identified this role also in the breakout rooms. Clarify his goals, is able to identify talent and say who should do what. That's the kind of a situation. But sometimes people think, hey, this person is offloading, work onto us. And that's the allowable weakness which is there. And the team worker. And the cooperative, friendly, diplomatic. We've seen words like harmonizer, cheerleader in our breakout group. And I think all these are very clear attributes of the team leader, the team worker. But you ask the team worker to make a decision or faced with a dilemma, they may not take a stance. And it is key to understand this. Sometimes certain professions, people seem to be in team worker roles and they may not take a stance, and we might get a little upset and think, why can't they take a stance? But inherently, this is the dilemma which is there, the allowable weakness which is there. And for each of us, that appreciation would make a lot of difference in the coaching scenario also. If you know that, oh, these are some of the dominant roles, the preferred roles, and that's how there could be a downside to it. Okay, the thinking roles, they're interesting. The plant, people are creative, imaginative, and offers alternatives, but they can be preoccupied by their own thoughts and may not be communicative. And I've noticed it, in myself. This is one of my preferred roles, and I realize sometimes I've not given the full information to some of the people who are close to me. And I get this feedback from my wife as well. That a great idea, but then we don't know what you're thinking. And that's the thing. And that feedback is also very facilitated. Monitor evaluator. This is person who's logical. We made statements like planning. Okay. And I didn't really see the word evaluation or audit in this whole roles which you all said. I don't know why. I'm not trying to second guess, but I'm just making an observation. I didn't see it. But the monitor evaluator would come from that kind of a thing of logical, analytical, very discerning. Judgment levels are pretty good. They're also fact-based. But what would happen is you will see that these people could be slow moving, lacks drive. Suppose you want to get a very important project report passed by a person who is a monitor evaluator. He will take his time to do that. For you, who's action-oriented, a shaper might get definitely upset and say, what is happening? Why is things so slow? But then accuracy is a key thing. Logic is a key thing for such a person. Then Belbin added this next one called the specialist. He found that there are people who are motivated by the pursuit of knowledge. And when we look at industries and businesses, our own work life, we need to have specialists. We see them in medical hospitals, but we also, need for the kind of businesses which are coming about, that you need specialists, and they have those specialists who get into that detail of a particular body of knowledge. But the downside is that they contribute a narrow front and delve on technicalities. So this, in a sense, is the foundation and the backbone of the Belbin team roles. That's what I would say. So let's go further. What happens? So what Belbin team roles does is actually measure the behaviors. Okay. And so behaviors, one of the things Shanti said, my hobby is photography. So you can photograph behaviors. You can't necessarily photograph personality or genetics or DNA. So whatever is observable, then it becomes a common reference point and a shared vocabulary. I think that's the good thing which distinguishes this particular tool and enables you as a coach to speak about specific behaviors and draw the coach's attention to those behaviors for you to kind of understand, appreciate, and dwell further. So what Aristotle says, what we are is what we repeatedly do. Those are the behaviors which come about. Okay, let's go further. And there are two aspects in the Belbin tool. One is the self-perception inventory. You can get a report based on what you perceive of yourself. Okay, and there are some limitations of it. That's only one side of the story. And when I saw an 8-sided mirror of Leonardo da Vinci, I could see all aspects of myself endless times. And I think that is a key aspect of seeing the other aspects of yourself. Because generally in a self-perception, we look at only one side. But then when you look at the full report with observer assessments, then you're able to get a consolidated report. That is, you also see how you are, how others see you, and then you can say, hey, this is how I am. This is how I am. I'm going to give you a few more examples through some cases. They've been masked, and some Belbin and Cert have been kind to give me a few other cases as well. So we will examine them, and then we will answer some questions around the coaching aspect of it. So any questions so far on the need for both self-perception and observer assessment? That gives a consolidated output of the Belbin report. And that is the total input for coaching as such. Any questions, anything? Anyone has a hand to put up? I can just answer and then we go forward.
There's a question in the text chat, Emmy. How do you deal with the team worker profile who is slated for a leadership position? Or if a CXO uses Belbin for her team, there is a chance they won't give leadership position to the team worker profile. how can we avoid this bias?
Okay. So we will we'll take this question a little later. I'll be able to answer it, and towards the end, when we come, we will be able to answer it. But my specific thing, of course, is a great question. I'm going to answer it, Habovi. But I was just looking at this particular till this point, if there are any doubts. So we will go further now. So, okay. So I'm going to show you a sample report. It's a pretty extensive report. And it talks about the assessment results in rank order, then the pie charts of the self-perception versus observers. It's a very important thing. Then self-perception team role profile, and the bar graph of observer words that you have. Then a counseling report, a character profile, and list of observer responses. And what could you do on your work style? So if you really see the 16 pages are a consolidated thing, and it is actually, there's a self-learning process as such. And but the good news is not many of the coaches read it in detail. And that's where you are there to read it for them, understand it, and help them draw insights. That's what I would say. But otherwise, by itself, it's a pretty detailed and comprehensive report. So that's the situation I want to say. Let me walk you through a sample report. And this is a sample report. It's no person living or dead, but which the Belbin company has made for us. So very quickly, you get the summary of these descriptions. I'm going to skip this. I'm not going to talk too much about it. But here, you find that this is a report of the person, and you can see that the longer the histogram, that particular team role is present in the person. All 9 team roles are there. So the coordinator, shaper, and resource investigator seem to be the top 3 team roles. The least preferred team roles are completer, finisher, monitor, evaluator, and specialist as such. So this gives a glance as where you are. Okay. Then it tells you how did people observe the person, the different way people have observed. Okay. And you can see that there seems to be some kind of a harmony in what the person's self-perception is and what the observers also have said. So which means that the way the person is landing that way on the observers also. Okay. And I want to ask you a question. What if there is a difference between self-perception and observer's assessment? What would it mean? Anyone can unmute and speak, not the Belbin certified people, but just especially those 8% who don't know about Belbin. Yeah. Thanks, Anu and Pankaj. Yes, blind spots. Fantastic, right? So that itself, as a coach, you can pick up that data, that detail, and say, hey, man, what do you think about this? What do you think about it? Okay. Now here is the difference between the self-perception and then the observer assessments. By and large, this seems to be in harmony other than in implementer, whereas the self-perception is higher and the observers is definitely lower. And that's a point to think about as to, hey, there is a difference, and where is that coming from? And let's go further. And this is the team role preferences of the self-perception. There's one particular thing called drop points. So sometimes when people answer in a manner which cancels out, then you know they've not understood it or whatever it is. And if it's a lot of points which are dropped, then perhaps you might do a retest again. So as a coach, just look at these things also. Don't ignore these things as the drop points. With more than a certain number for you, it's important for you to look at and see. In other instruments also, I look at the validity. And then I say, hey, I'm not going to use this tool because it's not a valid tool. And therefore, whatever interpretation I might give, I can make some sense out of it, but whatever I do may not necessarily be relevant to the person, So that's a key thing which you need to keep in mind. And here's a beautiful counseling report, which kind of goes through a lot of detail. And those of you who have done this will see that it is quite helpful. And so it tells about the strengths and weaknesses, the whole introduction. And sometimes I'm going to show you one report where it says that observers don't share your perception. You need to watch out. So those kind of little pointers and raising of flags helps the person take action. Now, in my experience, interpreting it for different people, sometimes people don't understand this. And that's where you have an opportunity to get into a little detail and tell them, hey, this is the implication of it, and sometimes the English also may be a little difficult for people. And how can we translate it into little stories or relevant to their context? If someone is into hardcore IT area, how can you relate it to them, or a pharma industry or manufacturing? So those are certain aspects which are opportunities for coaches, I would say. Okay, this is the possible way you can maximize your potential. And this is a very interesting and important is a point. I told you about the allowable weaknesses. It is here. Sometimes I've noticed that the line is drawn here. Somebody's weaknesses are there, right? It's a big thing. Then I tell them, it's boss, you're kind of, there's an opportunity for you to improve over there. And why is it so? What is it? It could be any of these areas. Particularly, of course, when we come to this thing called the shaper, it's a more visible behavior. So therefore, people tend to identify it a little more easier. That's where it's a thing which becomes a flag you can help people understand. Okay, here's another very interesting set of words. And it tells us the various words, behaviors which the observers have seen, and tells them that this person is encouraging of others, outspoken, consultative, and all these things. The words in the italics are where their weaknesses are coming out. So you can see someone said is manipulative, right? Someone said is impulsive, some pushy, uninvolved with specifics. Okay, so generally what I do is I ask people to look at least the top 3 of these words and say, hey, what do you have to say about this? What is the story coming here? What is the message? Which times you do this? So it opens a lot of dialogue as a coaching conversation. Okay, friends, there are a lot of zeros over here. What would you do with the zeros? Anyone? Do you take it as information or you ignore it because it's zero? Yes, no? You can unmute and tell. Piyush says ignore.
It could
Wouldn't
be
you still-
possibilities to work on.
So the ones in italics would be, things that are not observed. The ones that are in bold, those are areas that one needs to look at as to why are these behaviors not noticed in me possibly.
Yeah.
Another way to look at it
Yeah.
is, if
Yeah.
there's a zero, that means, let's say perfectionist is a zero.
Yeah.
And let's say the job demands something. It's better for the coachee to be aware that he may not dwell on perfectionism if the role demands a perfectionism. So these are all awareness points, I say, saying these
Yeah.
are, that's where I would leave it.
Yeah. So I thanks so much. Some said ignore, but I would think, look at it. Sometimes, yes, what the job requires and where the shortcomings are, that's a great way to make them aware. And sometimes, generally people have their own anxieties and fears. And sometimes I notice that they tend to think a little bit less of themselves. Then for example, you can tell, hey man, nobody is saying you're over talkative or you're restrictive in outlook or oversensitive or inflexible. Well, especially italics. Nobody has pointed that to you. I mean, pat yourself on the back. Nobody says that you're fearful of conflict. Okay, but then you take, as Anand said, this willing to adapt can be a certain area for them to look at. But if it's not a natural tendency, it may not work. But that's the way I look at it. But I look at it as all data. That's what I just wanted to say. Yes. Okay, so it tells us that there are different muscles we can use, and if you've not used, you can think what you can use. Okay, now let's go further. These are the kind of work styles which can come on the interplay of the various roles. And however, we have 9 team roles, and there can be a top team role, like as you said, team worker. But suppose somebody has got another role, like a shaper is there. We have to look at the full profile to make an informed judgment on the potential candidates. But this interplay of the various things helps us to actually give opportunities and awareness to the people as what they can do. Okay. Okay, so I'll take you through. These are another sample reports. I just wanted to show you that the associated weaknesses which are there. Here is one particular case. What do you think about this particular case? Any quick thoughts? This is the distance. As a coach, what's the opportunity for you? Anyone? Just unmute and tell.
Yeah, so I would possibly ask the coachee as to, hey, this seems to be showing up a little strong for you. What could be happening here?
Correct. And then if you recollect, I told you shaper is one who's dynamic, challenges people, but can be seen as blunt and can be upsetting people and prone to provoke. So there is more of that behavior happening. And another thing I've noticed in these things is these are visible roles, very visible. And people sometimes with shapers get insulted. They feel insulted if somebody is provoked or otherwise provocative. So therefore, as coaches, when you look at these kind of bar graphs, we have great opportunity to ask them and guide them in a manner so that they can be more effective. Essentially, they have the qualities, they have the energy and the abilities, but perhaps not the awareness and the understanding of the implications of their actions. And when that happens, there is an opportunity for them to make choices in their behavior the next time. And that's where I would say these kind of data is a little graphic. But if I were to describe it without such a graph, it becomes a little difficult for them to comprehend. And I think that's where it is. Anand, you raised a hand, please.
Yeah, so Emmanuel, if I look at this graph and when I look at the RI and CO, which are strengths, this person is operating from these 2 strengths. Is that a good way to look at it? Why I'm saying that is the shaper is lesser strength. It looks at 50%, let's say. So this person is primarily or more prone to using RI and CO because I've still not mastered the terminology. So I'll leave it with you. So in that case, that shaper, so much of shaper, unless the role demands it, do we really need to require it? Do we need to really dwell on it? I would dwell on the weaknesses of the RI and CO because those are his primary behaviors that he's exhibiting.
Yes. So even as an RI, when he's kind of getting across to people, could be, he might be opening doors, but could be upsetting people in some way because this part is coming up, or he might be a little demanding. As a coordinator, he could possibly be, getting work done with a bit more of in an authoritarian way. That's the thing, because of this particular aspect of the allowable weakness being extended. That's what I would say. And my take, especially in other psychometrics as well, things like these are more visible and seen by all, and therefore it has an impact on others. Suppose as a RI, you derail, that means you might be a little forgetful, you might be going from you lose interest as an RI. So that doesn't impact so much. You might say, oh, you didn't complete this job. That can be the thing. Or I forgot to communicate. Or as a coordinator, it can be seen as offloading personal work. It is not so visible. Why I come to this particular thing is it can be a lot more visible. That's the only part of it. But again, there are strengths. We should play with them. But when it is so profound, it will be manifesting in other behaviors also. That's my point.
Emmy, there's another question.
Yes, Krishna.
See here, is it not important that we do a mapping of the role requirement before we get into this assessment?
Yeah, that is a great question. There is an opportunity available in Belbin to look at the jobs, and that is done. And therefore, you see who would be a greater fit. That's possible. And that's the best way to do it. I don't think we are mature enough. Very few organizations are doing that, but Belbin methodology is possible. I think that's the comprehensive, I would say, way to go about it as a consultant. So I agree with you.
So as a quick follow-up to the question, is this used as a hiring tool, assessment tool for hiring?
Yes, for that we need to look at the job, and I tell you, I used it in some places. So first we've looked at the job and we mapped out what are the team roles required for that particular job. So all interested stakeholders were involved in making the assessment. Then we came up with a profile. Then we had about 12 odd people who had applied for that role, and we did the Belbin profiling for them. Then we knew, that some would not necessarily be able to deliver because the team role profiles were not matching with the job requirement. So that's the way to go about it. It's possible that to use it in the hiring as well. Right. Okay. Who has raised the hands? Let's just see. Devang and Deepak. Devang, go first, please. You are the first.
A very good evening. Thank you. So if I am a team player, what should be my exposure spread with the person whom I am kind of wanting to observe or rate in terms of number of weeks, months, or years? If I'm a fresher, I will rate the person differently. If I am been exposed to him or her, I'll rate the person differently. And how does the tool therefore neutralize this difference in gap of exposures? And is there any deviation, etc.? And how does the coach deal with it, having known or not known the deviation? Thank you.
Yeah. Devang, typically we tell people to find out people who know them. And I would think about 6 months is a reasonable time for people to know each other. Okay. So to at least come to certain understanding on the behaviors. And the observers have to tick on a set of words which are behaviors. So therefore it's possible. That's one part of it. Then there's another, so I think 6 months is a reasonable time. I've also told people that sometimes they say, we're very new in this job, what should we do? So look at past colleagues. Also look at and valuable information is from the spouse. So that also has been done. So you need about minimum four observers, maximum 6 observers. So I'm sure for anybody, there will be that many kind of people who know them for a greater than 6 months to a year period. And then I've asked people, because in these groups we've had people who have been observers for each other. And the typical question which might come in is, what about biases, right? That will people be biased when they make an observation? And then we've come to that situation that well, I asked people, okay, you've been an observer, and when you did that, did you have any biases, or were you trying to, what was on your mind? Not even asked, did you have, what was in your mind? They say, we tried to be truthful. We tried to be what is correct. Then I asked the person who's been an observer, I said, what is on your mind? He said, I've tried to be correct. Then I said, when that is the intent of everyone, why do we get this doubt that the other could be biased when you yourself, are wanting to be correct? So that's the thing. I hope I've answered your question, and we've got Deepak and Sanjay also. So
how does the coach deal with these biases he found, is what the question was.
I don't think there are the tool. It depends on the choice of observers. So I've seen that people do what is correct in these kind of things, and we don't have a and the coach uses the report. That's where it is, and the report is statistically valid and reliable, and therefore, if there's a reason for the coach to disbelieve the validity or reliability of the report, then he may bring it to the notice of the Belbin company. But I'm not so sure they will be able to also. But this is a proven tool with millions of people taking it. That's where it is. If I were to ask you to observe for somebody for about 3 months, and we can have an offline conversation, and then later you can tell whether you're biased or not. That's where it is. Okay.
Also, Emmy, if I may just add a bit to what you're saying, the concept of biases can creep into any kind of psychometric assessment tool of any sort, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, much as the observers or the feedback givers don't intend to be biased, they could be subconsciously biased by their own worldview.
Yeah.
My take on that, in my experience, has been that basically the overall validity reliability tests build in these biases population by population. So therefore, those subconscious biases tend to get cancelled out over a period of time, number one. But more importantly, if the person who is, for whom this report has been generated, does not feel that there's a bias.
Yes.
I think then we are fair and square. I mean, if he also can see see, it's a matter, oftentimes I see that these reports tend to validate what the person himself or herself knows pretty much.
Yeah.
There's a great degree of agreement, and there are some surprises, no doubt, but people tend to take it with the right spirit. And that's the whole idea, no one is intentionally biased in most of the times, in my experience.
So let's just take this thing. Let's take persuasive, as a word. What could be the biases when someone ticks that the person's persuasive or not? These are all the options which are there. Someone says ticked for frightened of failure. Is it a behavior or what is it? So it is either it's observed or not, right? So that's why, as I said, it can be photographed. So I think by the design of it itself, it reduces these biases to quite an extent. And even if you catch yourself, you deliberately want to write something which is not for that person, that we don't know. I've not seen people to do that. Anyway, let's see. We've got half an hour, and there is a lot more to cover. But I've seen that somebody raised the hand. Deepak raised the hand. Can you also put your questions in the chat? Then I will take it up.
Yeah. So my question, Emmanuel, is this: is that how much does the organizational culture play a role in people choosing a certain preference for themselves? Meaning, I'm just thinking one could be fairly wanting to be a team player in a certain kind of a nourishing environment, but may choose not to in an environment where that could be seen as risky for that human being.
So Deepak, I will answer it a little later also, but very first way, I said a team role is something is our tendency to behave in a particular way. Okay, it's our tendency. So when we look at this SPI and the observer assessments, people are observing certain things about you. It is not choosing. It's not choosing. Okay, so that's where it is. And I will talk about the culture part in the later part of my slides. Okay, let's just see. Here's another thing in this report. Here's the difference in the numbers, right? 15.3. The person thinks he's a shaper, but others don't think. But the person, he thinks he's not a team, is less of a team worker, but others see him more as a team worker. And the report, I've just taken a extract. It says there is some support from others in terms of what you consider, what you yourself consider as a primary role, although they do not see this as your main strength. Okay, as Anu also said earlier, and I think Pankaj said these are blind spots. And when you have this documentation on a report, you're able to speak about it a little more easily with the coachee. And that's the power of this tool, in using this tool in this aspect. Okay. Now, here's some bonuses in this tool. You have what is called a working relationship report. And the Belbin methodology, it's a value for money proposition. And I got several of these done because I found they were sub $10 as such in terms of a thing. But look at the immense value which comes. So suppose there's a boss and a subordinate. Okay, here it is a particular thing saying so-and-so is the boss of so-and-so. And both the profiles are put. Here they say the formula which is almost certain to lead to clashes if the line of command is not properly structured or there are different priorities. If both parties are fully engaged, there'll be less susceptible organized argument or the generation of tension. Okay, that's where a working relationship report comes. This is just a summary. Here's another one. Here they say, like, Suresh may be inclined to feel impatient and push Banerjee around. Equally, Banerjee may show disregard for Suresh's impetuosity. On the other hand, if Suresh Mani respects Banerjee's opinion and logic, an excellent combination of thought and action can result. Okay, gentlemen, this is the working relationship report. Just think about this for a moment in an organization that you're able to, my question is, what is required for such a report to happen in an organization? A short discussion. Use the chat. Have you understood my question? So here, two individuals have to share their report and give their consent to the Belbin people, and they will generate this report. Yeah, Sanjay, I think you're right. So essentially, you must be willing to be vulnerable and share that, yes, these are my limitations, these are my strengths, and let's kind of see what it is. Now, suppose, forget the names over here, if one of you were the boss and another subordinate, what would you do with this kind of a report? You and your subordinate have got it. Yeah. So Anu says, desire to work better. I think these are certain opportunities which is possible from such a report. And if you have about 7-8 people working together in a team, and you have working relationship reports as boss subordinate and as peers, then there's an opportunity for people to understand each other and work with each other. And we find that sometimes in a group of 5, 6, some tend to get better and some don't. But we think, oh, just because they go for a drink together or a smoke together, or they're, in the same particular space, we tend to attribute those things. But actually the key is in the behaviors and the preferences they have, or the lack of it. Right. I like the responses on the chat as well. Okay, let's go further. There's a team report which is possible, and it's a lengthy one. I will just go through one thing, and I will request your indulgence. Let's look at this team. So 4 people in the team, and they have their preferred roles and least preferred roles, you can see. And the purpose of this is to tell you the possibilities of the tool. This team report is extra. You get the individual report, you get 5, 6 of a team, put them together, and then this is generated. So it tells us the overall team roles of all the people. And then this tells us what is the kind of who can do what. Okay, so what ideas plant, they say when some new line of thought is desired, ask RK, also involve so and so, right? But also you look at this particular side of it, which tells you there is no one in the team showing an implementer's thing, or a completer finisher, or a monitor evaluator. What will happen to this team? What would happen? Okay, these are some of the things. You see the gaps are there. So the report tells us what can be happening, let me just. So the team possesses a good deal of trust, and it comes to generating ideas. Many of the signs of a strong and powerful team are there, but things could easily go wrong if 1 or 2 members insist on pushing their own ideas and neglect to take account of the contribution of others. Bear in mind that energy and trust are easily lost if the team fails to gel. And they say this team is potential for creativity and innovation. However, if this is to come about, team members must be respectful of each other's ideas. The worst scenario is that the team fails to finish what it starts and may disappoint its customers or clients through errors or omissions. And that's where, when you look at a team report, look at other objective data like customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, customer complaints, and or awards won, or so on and so forth. You can verify it when you are in that coaching conversation. I see lots of. Yeah, thanks. I think great. You guys are all set to be certified in Belbin. Jaishankar, I hope you are there, and please note down. And these are all the observer words which are possible for you to look at. And one of the things I've done on a one-on-one basis is to look at the italics. I think I mentioned where are the ones which are top 3, and ask them to work on. Okay, I'm not going to team C, but here is a situation where I worked in one company, and we had I put the roles of people, and we said, let's kind of find out who's what, and the ones in black are all the strengths, and the blue, light blue is the second preferred role. So that's how we looked at it. And all of us, about 8 of us, we kind of understood what strengths are. And there was a crisis. We were able to go through it very well and actually get a global award also. So this, and then the other happy outcome was the amount of trust which got generated, because we were able to share our vulnerability with each other. And because we shared our vulnerability, we were able to support each other. That's the bonus which happens in a team setting. And I'm talking first person singular as such. So it's an important thing about having the whole team understand their limitations and their strengths, and we play from the front foot from our strengths and support each other for our limitations. And that makes a lot of difference. Okay. So some questions very quickly. Ordinarily, are team members aware of each other's strengths and limitations? Yes, no?
No. Oftentimes it's very intuitive, but not structured.
Not structured, right? And my question is framed, what are the outcomes of such a shared awareness?
I can see two things. One is that you work around them, learn to leverage off complementary strengths, or you avoid, those pitfalls. The second is that if you make a conscious effort, then you could actually learn to work around it and develop yourself in the process.
Right, right. And as I mentioned, trust is another very beautiful outcome. And then you're part of a winning team, and there's nothing more seductive than winning, I would say. And I must tell you, that particular team I was, we still meet, we still go out on outings together. We bonded as brothers, and that's a happy outcome of what we did as professionals. So what has happened as in a professional setting has petered off into a personal bonding as well. And normally, how do we seek such awareness in team settings? You can be very creative now in telling me how you do it. Normally, how we do it?
We go on an off-site and do it over either in a workshop or
we do
an off-site. Yeah.
But there could be consternation as to why it's happening and all that. There was once in one particular place, there was some kind of a off-site, and then later there were changes happening in the system. Those who were not okay were kind of sent out, So then what happens to trust levels and fear and anxiety?
Yeah.
So see, here's a framework which will give you a certain amount of objectivity. I've got a few closing slides. Shanti must be a little anxious for time. So there are least preferred roles, So we must try avoid using them for prolonged periods. Be aware that these are least preferred roles. Sometimes, we get this little situation that I am a CXO, I'm a CHRO. I mean, I'm an MD or a sales head. I can do everything. So I think just the Belbin Team Role Methodology is a little, humbling and brings you that reality check. If you know that this is how it is, then perhaps you will seek the help of others. Manageable roles, experiment and develop, that's part of the growth. Because then whatever is your preferred role, develop and perfect these roles. Then plan your career, around that, the natural strengths. That's the key part, one would say, which is important. Lakshmi, you say maybe tougher with remote teams, but now actually, it's possible also with remote teams for you to have one-on-one conversations. And even in conversation, when we went in the breakout room, I thought there was fairly good rapport building and all that. But it's possible if we make the effort. There are tools and techniques to go about that, right? Working with others, some thoughts. So suppose somebody is the same, like here the RI is there. How would it be? Will they work together? Generally, they say we are very comfortable with whom we are compatible. But here's the good news. We are more effective with people with whom we are incompatible. I think we have to choose that out. Okay. So the unlike, we are more compatible with. This will take a while for all of us to sink in, but I think it's an important point. Okay. What I would like to see, this is just an action plan to help people understand and develop their strength. I could make this available, but as a coach, you could kind of help them, prepare something around their action plan. But I want to say these words in conclusion. I think first and foremost, you have strengths. Then each strength has an allowable weakness, right? And I think awareness and acceptance is critical for effectiveness. Not only awareness, but acceptance, right? So also understand that your team, your bosses also have unique team roles. Then leverage the strengths, and support for weakness leads to effectiveness. I think I mentioned that. So self-disclosure and acceptance of feedback enables team members to support you. Self-disclosure. That means, see, I'm not very good in planning is one way, or I'm not damn good in ideas. Can you help me? I say, sure. Somebody is good in ideas. Go to the plant and ask. Then I think, finally, Belbin profile enables you to ask meaningful questions you're coaching based on objective data. So that is where I would like to say, and this is what Professor Belbin said, a team is not a bunch of people with job titles, but a congregation of individuals, each of whom has a role that is understood by other members. I think that is the key which comes in the team aspect of it. And therefore, I think that Belbin and coaching are complementary. Thank you. And have I answered your question, have we, in the process? Because I owe you an answer. Is she there?
I'll check.
I think have we left the meeting, Anuj?
Oh, okay.
All right. So, Emmy, if I can ask a few questions, is it okay for me to ask?
The first question is okay. The second and third, I'm sure Shanti is going to charge for it. But please go ahead, Krishna. We know each other.
That's why I was very careful. I said questions anyway. So, here, how long is the assessment of a Belbin assessment valid? As in, like, is it something like a trait that takes much longer to transform, or is it a behavior that's exhibited so that can change more rapidly over time depending upon the demands of the role and how I grow? So how stable is that? I mean to say, is it?
See, I've seen, I first took it in 97. That is one part of it. But I've done it in 2005 and then later sometime around about 2012 or so. Generally, some of the team roles have been steady for me. I would say every 4, 5, 6 years, maybe a good time, but you don't see too much of a dramatic shift. But my awareness of myself, I think, like all coaches, we improve, we change, we are more self-aware. Okay, so what I understand is, of course, behaviors can change, but the preferences do not change much. That's what Belbin, Dr. Belbin says as well. But your second and third question, Krishna, if I'm happy to respond. Uday has made a comment.
Yeah, anyone else who has questions, please unmute and ask.
Yeah, I hope Krishna is not afraid that I said he'll be charged. Please go ahead.
I won't charge.
Thanks, Uday, for your valuable comments, and a pleasure you're here. Uday has been my senior and my friend since many, many, many years.
Thanks, Emmy. I really meant very sincerely all what I wrote there. It's been a pleasure listening to you, privileged.
Thank you, Uday. Oh, thanks, Abhi. Nice that you're here, and wonderful. Lakshmi, is your question answered? You made a comment quite early. If you can repeat it, and Lakshmi Sriram. Oh, I've answered your question. Fair enough.
Yeah, Emmanuel, I had a question. I think partly it got answered. So my question was whether it's useful for team group coaching. I think the answer is obviously yes. But what I want to ask is, how often is it used here in India? Hello?
Yeah, there was some. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So
How
what I
often?
wanted to ask, how often have you seen it being used for group coaching in India?
No, it can be used. We've done it with groups.
Okay.
And of course, more, see, coaching has come of age in the last 4-5 years. But earlier, it was like a team awareness, you can call it.
Yeah.
And when you generate a team report and you look at the opportunities and limitations, then the team becomes more self-aware and they tend to support each other. There are a couple of guys on an oil platform who saw it in other functions and deliberately asked us to facilitate it for them. They went on to be very high-performing teams thereafter. So also I told you about another place where we work, and we tended to take feedback of each other. Now I think with the impetus in coaching, it gives a common reference point and enables team achievement. Because you see, when all the 9 team roles are present in a team, it is more effective. That's the research of Dr. Belbin. Okay. And then if they're more effective, that means something is happening to the bottom line, something is happening to market share, right? All these indicators are being impacted.
Okay.
And you can actually correlate it to your coaching as well. Because otherwise it's a little bit amorphous as to what is the coaching conversation and the business result. But having that, you have an opportunity to work on it.
All right. Thank you.
KKC, your hand is up.
Yeah. Emmy, I have a question that before you administer Belbin in any team in an organization, are there any cultural red flags that we need to be aware of because of which the administration of Belbin may not be effective in that organization?
It's a great question. I think it's a chicken and egg situation. If there are red flags, perhaps it might enable them to know what would keep them from being effective. That's one part of it. But if you're aware of certain things, it's better to have a conversation with the stakeholders and say, hey, this is what it is. I know a particular place where I did work for some time, and we did administer the Belbin. And that particular team, all very wonderful leaders, specialists also in their own right. But in a group, about 8-9 people, about 6 were shapers. Okay. And the shaper is challenging and dynamic. And I wasn't aware of that till I saw that. But also, we found that eventually, there was that checkout and someone had to leave, something happened. The team actually disintegrated. But in any case, it might happen that way. In any case, it might happen. So I think if you find the red flags, it's better to speak about it to the sponsors, bring that awareness, then the implications of that awareness. Then look at the tools, because tools are only a means. But I think the more important thing is you want effectiveness over there. And I would think that conversation with the sponsor might be helpful. It could be the chairman, it could be the MD, it could be the team head or something like that. That's my view.
Thank you, Emmy.
Yeah, thanks. Anu, before I go to you, let me just respond to Malti, who's asked a question in the chat, just being respectful to her. She says, how does one resolve or reduce the associated weaknesses? So Malti, it's pretty simple. When you look at the list of observer words, then you know the words in italics and which are the ones which are more pronounced. Then I think the conversations with the coachee could be around those words. first, which are of higher priority. Suppose there's 7 observations on being fearful of conflict. I think that becomes an opening point, I would say. That's where it is. Anu, please.
So hi, Emmy. Thanks so much for this presentation. It was very, very informative. So my question is on a broader, it's on a broader plane. Typically, I hear a lot of to and fro or to and for against and in favor of trait-based and type-based evaluation. So from whatever little I heard from you today, Belbin seems to be more a trait-based assessment, which is on a continuum. So one, what are your views on that? And second, Belbin is a very old instrument. It's quite dated to that extent. So I just wanted to check how much of fresh research and inputs have gone into the instrument to continue to have it evolved and relevant in today's times.
Yeah, no, I think first and foremost, thanks for those comments. But what I've been attempting to say is that it's a behavior-based instrument. And even my opening remarks, like it can be photographed, behavior can be photographed. So that's one part. So as long as there are human beings, there are interactions and behaviors, I think it is relevant. But as I mentioned also, sometime in the early 90s, the 9th role of specialist got added by the research. Now, I have not yet gone through it, but right now Belbin methodology is undergoing a little more change, is undergone change, and the new reports are more advanced. I have not seen it to make a affirmative statement. I have to undergo one myself, but short answer, it is being responsive to the times, and it is being relevant to the times. But I think as long as there's behavior, it is possible. For example, we can do a fun thing. We can have all the observer assessment words, and then we can pick up any public figures, and then each of us in this room actually tick off. And then we can get an observer assessment of some of the world leaders as well. And because we can see behavior from what we understand of it and what is reported of it. And there will be a reasonable amount of, validity on that, I would think so. So that's where I would say. I hope I've answered your question, Anu.
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Right. So it's already 8 p.m. and Shanti, unless there's no other question, then I should hand it back to you.
Few seconds for any questions for Emmy. And people have pasted the link to the session for next, after a fortnight, 31st October. Please do register. I'm pasting it again. And I'm also looking for volunteers to co-facilitate the session with me. If you're interested, please direct message me and we will take it forward from there. I have to do calling 1, calling 2, going, gone. With that, thank you so much, Emmy. The text chat is overflowing with lots of such wonderful comments. It's been a great and engaging session. We look forward to hosting you once again with more questions and stuff. Thank you, everyone.
So thanks so much, Shanti. Enjoyed the whole, volley with everyone. Thanks very much for this engaging session and your lovely comments.
Lovely comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Emmy. Thanks, Shanti.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emmy. Thanks, Shanti.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So, Anuj, your specific question, we can get in touch offline.
Yes, Emmy. Shanti responded, so I got in touch with Jay Shankar on WhatsApp separately as well. Thank you so much. Great talking.
Thank you very much.
Great session.
Thanks, Emmy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.